Welcome to our reflections on the book of Revelation. We now come to a new section in chapters 10 and 11, where there is another pause in the tribulation that is coming to the earth. And a pause has always got to do with the church. So we've come out of chapter 9, in which we saw the beginning of hell on earth. We have seen the arrival of Satan. And I want to point out to you that you get the arrival of Satan before you get the arrival of Jesus in chapter 19. Satan always tries to get ahead of God and to try and rob God of his scenery and all the rest of it. It's a bit like you're going to have a most wonderful actor on the stage. Somebody else comes in and tries to take over and steal their thunder. That's the way Satan acts. So we've had a small taste of the hell that he brings upon the earth. So the church is warned, therefore, of the events that are coming. We were told in the trumpets number 5 and number 6 that we should really be warned about what is coming, because that's chapter 9. Therefore, John is telling us that he is introducing us to chapter 13 to chapter 18, where we will meet Satan and the Antichrist and the system that he will actually use to bring the church absolutely to its knees and to bring it to death and resurrection. So therefore, we have been introduced to what we will understand in chapter 13 as the evil trinity, small t, in which Satan will operate through the Antichrist and in the Antichrist system. But when the battle is all over, and everything has calmed down, then the earth will in fact be ruled by the most blessed Trinity in heaven from chapters 20 to 22. So it will appear as if Satan has won the battle, but appearances are not what we go by facts. And it will be very important in the chapters to come that the church keeps her attention on reality and that she doesn't allow just what is in front of her to distract her in any way from where she's going. Let me give you an example. If Jesus' mother had not had a good vision before her as to what her son, who her son was and what he was doing and where it was all going, she might have looked at him on the cross and wondered what on earth the angel Gabriel was talking about when he said, "He will be great. He will be the son of David. He will rule over the house of Jacob forever. His kingdom will never end." And here he is dying in absolute agony on the cross. Now, the church is going to have that same challenge put to it when it sees the church being brought to its knees, and it must look at the greater picture. That's why John gives it to you ahead of time. So at the end of chapter 9, we had the first woe, and the second woe, and we won't have the third one for a while. So all of these events are going to follow in sequence, one after the other, like a drama that has started. And we need to remember Amos 3:7, that the Lord never does anything without telling his prophets first. So here in chapters 10 and 11, the Lord is going to warn the church that she must watch and pray. She must watch and pray. It's the same as what Jesus said before he died himself. This is Mark chapter 13 and verses 33 to 37. And this is absolutely urgent at the time when we're actually speaking now. "Be on your guard, stay awake, because you never know when the time will come. It's like a man traveling abroad. He has gone from home, and he has left his servants in charge, each with his own task." Gone from home is that Jesus will have gone back to heaven. He's left his servants in charge of the church. Each one has its own task. "And he has told the doorkeeper to stay awake." That's the chief shepherd. "So stay awake, because you do not know when the master of the house will come, evening, morning, or midnight, or even dawn. If he comes unexpectedly, he must not find you asleep." That was the warning given to Sardis. He must not find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to everyone, stay awake. Now, stay awake means that you keep your spiritual life alive, that you remain in grace, you remain in union with God, your prayer life is alive, and you are ready to cooperate with whatever it is that the Lord actually allows to happen to you. Not only you personally, but you as a church in a particular country or worldwide. So let's read a few verses from chapter 10. So this is chapter 10 from verse 1. Then I saw a powerful angel coming down from heaven. Oh, so we've switched from hell to heaven again. He was wrapped in a cloud with a rainbow over his head. His face was like the sun and his legs were pillars of fire. In his hand he had a small scroll unrolled, because Jesus has been unrolling the sealed scroll from chapter 6. He put his right foot in the sea and his left foot on the land. And he shouted so loud that it was like a lion roaring. At this, 7 claps of thunder made themselves heard. And when the 7 thunderclaps had spoken, I was preparing to write, John said, when I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, keep the words of the 7 thunderclaps secret. Don't write them down. And then the angel that I had seen standing on the sea and on the land raised his right hand to heaven and swore by the one who lives forever and forever, the one who made the heaven and all that is in it, and the earth and all that it bears, and the sea and all that it holds. The time for waiting is over, he announced. At the time when the 7th angel is heard sounding his trumpet, God's secret intention will be fulfilled, just as he announced in the good news through his servants, the prophets. So here you have a very powerful message given to us, and it's given to us by a powerful angel. Now, this person is described in terms of the glorious Christ in chapter 1, so much so that some people think it is the glorious Christ. But again, we mustn't make a mistake, as some people have made the mistake on the white horse. Jesus will not appear until chapter 19. So it's somebody in heaven who is very, very close to God. And so the closer you come to God, the more God-like you are. So this is a very high representative from heaven. It can't be Jesus. So the very interesting thing is that he comes from heaven in the middle of all the hellish stuff that's going on the earth from chapter 9, because that stuff is still going on. The fact that we're reading something different in chapter 10 doesn't mean that the stuff in chapter 9 is finished. And we're told that he is dressed in a cloud. Well, we know from Psalm 104, verses 1 to 3, that God himself comes like that. Bless the Lord, my soul. O Lord my God, how great thou art. You are clothed in majesty and glory. You are wrapped in a robe of light. You stretch the heavens out like a tent. You build your palace on the waters above. Using the clouds as your chariot, you advance on the wings of the wind, and you use the winds as messengers and fiery flames as your servants. So here you have someone, a messenger of God, coming on the clouds and coming with the glory of God all over him. Okay. Remember that in the book of Numbers, in chapter 9, from verse 15 to 23, that the author tells us about the cloud, and that the cloud is a symbol of the mystery of God. The cloud is the most wonderful symbol of God. It both reveals the light and conceals the sun at the same time. So we can't see God, and yet he's able to manifest himself to us. We can't see God and live. So the cloud is a very wonderful manifestation of God's presence. And we're told in Acts chapter 1 and verse 9 that Jesus ascended from the earth into heaven and was taken up into the cloud. That means taken up into the mystery of God's presence. Okay. We're told that there's a rainbow around the head of this angel messenger from God. And you remember in chapter 4 and verse 3 that that rainbow was around God and his throne. That's why this angel is sometimes thought of as Christ himself. His face shone like the sun, because the sun in the Bible is light, is the source of light, and therefore is a very good symbol of God, because God is light, 1 John 1:5. And his legs were like pillars of fire. That's why it's quite similar to the description of Jesus in chapter 1, Jesus in glory, I should say. So what we need to look at is that the heavenly dwellers, both angels and saints, grow more and more and more like God, we would say, with time. They are, of course, out of time and in eternity, but they're growing more and more like him. And people who have had encounters with saints or with angels, if the angels came in a more spiritual manner, sometimes they manifest as human beings, that you will see that the characteristics are very like God. We're told that the angel stands on the sea and the land. Now, in the Old Testament, the sea is usually the Gentile territories and the land is usually the Jewish territories. But John is speaking about the church. So it's the church and the world that he's talking about. So he stands on them. Therefore, the message he gives will be global. Okay. And he carries a small scroll or a small book. This is a small book containing the New Testament and the Psalms. But John uses a special word for the scroll that he's talking about. He uses the word biblaridion. Biblios is a small book, and biblaridion is a tiny book. Now there is the 4 Gospels printed on a book which is the size of a postal stamp. And the amazing thing is you can actually read the text if you have a hand lens. The text is as clear as anything. So he's talking about a small book that contains a massive message, because the message that's in this book is the time is now. The waiting is over. Judgment is here. Everything is going to flow. Now, why is everything going to flow? It's because there has been so little response to anything that God has given to us up to now. And we see that in the messages that were given through Moses to the people in Egypt at the time of the Exodus as well. If they had repented in the first 3 signs, the others would not have happened. If they had repented in any one of the other signs, then the whole thing wouldn't flow to completion. But it did, because Pharaoh hardened his heart more and more and more against God. So if the angel who looks so like Jesus in glory is standing on the earth and the sea and roaring like a lion, okay, what you need to see is a picture of a lion in the Serengeti, for example, and he stands in a prominent place and he lets out a roar and all the animals flee. And all the little ones flee into their burrows and everything. Why? Because the lion is staking his claim. And so this is a person representing the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and he is staking his claim that the kingdom of this world belongs to Christ. As Jesus had said in Matthew 28:20, all authority has been given to me. That's not only authority over the church, it's authority over the world. Everything belongs to him. And when Jesus actually manifests his presence in chapter 19, he's going to come as the King of Kings. That means the highest authority, and the Lord of Lords. Nobody has higher authority than him. Okay, so the shouting like a roaring lion is the announcement that he is coming to claim his kingdom. Of course, Satan has arrived first to try and see, can he stake a claim in anything that belongs to Jesus? And so it's important for us to realize that the angel is a representative, as all the other angels in the book of Revelation are representatives of God. And so we need to have a picture in our minds as to where the church is in all of this. Because there are some Christians who want to say that this is nothing to do with the church. Some of them even think that they're going to be raptured out of the world before all of this happens. That would be an awful tragedy. Instead of that, you look around you in society, in any country nowadays, and the church is there in the midst of the people. Little communities of the church spread out absolutely all over the world. Even in countries that are hostile to the gospel, the church is still there. And so whatever is going to happen in those countries, the church is going to experience it. But it's not actually aimed at the church. It's aimed at the world, the sinful world. But the church is among them. And so the church is being told that she has to be ready for these very disturbing events. She has to continue her ministry during these very disturbing events. She is the one who has to look after souls that are lost, people who are suffering and dying. She has to continue offering the word of God and the sacraments of God. She's got to continue to help people wash their robes white in the blood of the Lamb. In other words, the ministry must continue. And it's going to be more and more painful for her to do that. So many countries have had this experience already in history, including my own, where it was extremely dangerous to actually be a servant of Christ at a particular time, and it might cost you your life. Well, that's what John is actually talking about here. In these circumstances, the church really needs to hear the voice of God. And so the voice of God as the seven thunders begins to manifest itself now. And I want to read for you Jeremiah 25 from verse 30, because we have the lion roaring, okay? So this is what you read. Let your prophecy to them contain these words. In other words, this is what John is doing. His prophecy contains this. The Lord roars from on high. He makes his voice heard from his holy dwelling place. And here in the book of Revelation, his holy dwelling place is in heaven. And he roars aloud against his sheepfold. Okay? And so when he roars aloud, he wants to be heard. He shouts aloud like those who tread the grape. The sound reaches all the inhabitants of the earth, the sea and the land, to the far ends of the world. For the Lord is indicting the nations and arraigning all flesh for judgment, and so on. Jeremiah then continues with a message against the shepherds of Israel. I don't want to deal with that now here. It's just that the seven thunders, we've heard this before. And we have heard, for example, in Psalm 29, how strong the voice is. And most human beings can't hear the voice of God because they're not in the right place to hear it. And so if they're not in the right place to hear it, then the Lord will do something to make them hear. That's why it's called the seven thunders. Now, I've given you this before, but it's very important. And this is Psalm 29. Pay tribute to the Lord, you sons of God. Pay tribute to the Lord of glory and power. Pay tribute to the Lord of the glory of his name. Worship the Lord in his sacred court. The voice of the Lord is over the waters, the Lord over the multitudinous waters. The voice of the Lord is power. The voice of the Lord is splendor. The voice of the Lord shatters the cedars. The Lord shatters the cedars of Lebanon. That means he'll bring down the proud and the mighty. And he makes Syrian leap like a calf. The voice of the Lord sharpens lightning shafts. We're going to hear it in hail and thunder as well. And so what you're being told there in Psalm 29, read it for yourself. It's really beautiful if you read it all. And that is that for people who cannot hear him, they're not listening in prayer, they're not listening in his word, then he will use the elements to make us listen. Because God's voice will be heard, and that is that. John is told that what God actually says to him in the seven thunders, that he's not actually to write that down. It's very, very interesting. And we have to ask, what is it? If you look at Mark chapter 13, verse 32, some things are known only to God. When the apostles wanted to know the time and the conditions of the end times, Jesus said, but as for that day or hour, nobody knows it, neither the angels of heaven, nor even the Son that is on the earth. Nobody except God himself. Well, here in the seven thunders, God himself has actually spoken. And he has told John that it's not for now. So, not for now means chapter 10 of the book of Revelation. It also means the first century, but it is for now the end of times. Since John has been told that he cannot speak at this particular time, I just want to give you a text from St. Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:4, that he said he was caught up into paradise and he heard things that must not and cannot be put into words. Sometimes God's secret has got to be kept for the right time and the right moment. Thank you for listening. Slán agus Banach Day live. Goodbye. God bless you.
My life is a miracle. Every child has a story of God's love to share. Shalom world, tune into God's love story.